We tend to think of old Europe as the global center of loyalty and equality. The fight for the rights of any social groups or minorities often gains momentum here like small revolutions, even if these rights are not being infringed upon. In other words, just to be on the safe side. However, the story of suffrage in Switzerland casts significant doubt on all these liberal aspirations of Europe. It turns out that women in Switzerland were granted the right to vote and to stand for election only in 1971. Moreover, some cantons opposed this unprecedented innovation until as late as 1990. It's astonishing, just 50 years ago, women in one of Europe's wealthiest countries gained the right to vote. How did this happen? The reason lies in the fact that Switzerland is a direct democracy. Here, all socially and politically significant issues are decided by referendums. In other words, the residents directly determine the crucial turns in their country's fate. This means that to introduce new voting rights for women, all eligible voters, and exactly adult men, had to vote in favor of such an amendment to the country's constitution. As experience showed, achieving the acceptance of such an amendment through an exclusively male referendum proved to be a challenge. In 1959, the first referendum was held, which was intended to grant women the right to vote and be elected in government bodies. However, 68% of the voters in this referendum opposed such a violent political reform. The next referendum, conducted in 1971, turned out to be more successful. However, Switzerland also grants considerable autonomy to its cantons or regional authorities. While some cantons allowed women to run for a number of government positions earlier, others did not adopt the new legislation until as late as 1990. Another complication was an article in the Swiss constitution stipulating that only those who had served in the Swiss army had the right to vote and run in elections. For men, this was mandatory, but women served voluntarily. This meant that even after the 1971 referendum, women had limited opportunities to participate in elections. It took quite some time to bring all the laws into alignment. Nonetheless, Switzerland has been quick to make amends. In 2019, women comprised 41.5% of the elected members of the country's parliament. Today, women hold over a quarter of significant political positions in the country, and their numbers in key political roles are steadily increasing. It may sound shocking now, but just 100 years ago, women around the world had to fight for their right to vote. For instance, in Britain, women were allowed to vote only in 1918. Following the World War I, and even then a woman could vote only after reaching the age of 30 and if she had a higher education. In 1928, Britain equalized the voting rights of women and men. In Germany, women gained the right to vote in 1918 as well. However, at the time, Germans printed two types of ballots, separate ones for women and for men. It makes one wonder, did they count them differently or did they simply ignore the women's ballots? In 1933, the new government revoked women's voting rights and they were only restored in 1948. The situation in Spain wasn't much better. From 1931, educated adult women were allowed to vote in Spanish elections. However, women themselves actively criticized this decision, believing that Spanish women were not politically savvy enough to make informed choices. Spanish women gained full voting rights in 1976 during the country's transition to democracy. In the United States, women gained the right to vote in 1920. In Japan, women were able to participate in elections after World War II in 1947. Australia stood out positively, allowing women to vote and run for elections in 1902. The last countries in the world to grant voting rights to women were Bahrain in 2002, Kuwait in 2005, the UAE in 2006 and Saudi Arabia in 2015.